Salvete discipuli. In this video, I want to go through lines 1 through 12 of The Millionaire's Dinner Party, Chapter 6. It contains, as we will see, a number of different kinds of subordinate clauses, but a couple stand out, the indirect questions we've been talking about in class. By far, the hardest part of this section involves the vocabulary, so I may stop from time to time and discuss the vocab in the section in some detail. To set the context, in book 5 or chapter 5 of The Millionaire's Dinner Party, we saw that Trimalchio engaged in another piece of dinner theater where he had arranged this grand drama with the cook, where 3 white pigs were brought into the dining room. Trimalchio ordered that the largest of the pigs be slaughtered for dinner, and the pig was taken off to be killed and cooked, which one would have expected to have taken quite some time. In fact, fairly soon thereafter, the cooked pig is brought back in on a massive platter, and the guests, not surprisingly, are absolutely taken aback. How could a pig that size have been cooked so quickly? As they're marveling at the speed with which this happened, Trimalchio is putting on an act and pretending to look very closely at the pig, at which point he shouts out, "Oh, hasn't this pig been gutted? Bring that cook here." He threatens the cook with 100 lashes and then relents and says, "Well, since you have such a bad memory, gut the pig right here in front of us." The cook proceeds to do that, and lo and behold, out of the pig's stomach, where the cook makes the tumble all sorts of delectable foods, sausages, and all kinds of meats for the guests to eat. It's clear at this point that the whole scenario has been planned as dinner theater, and the guests applaud, and we find out that post hoc, after this, let me get to my marker here, post hoc, after this, the slaves, the subject of our first sentence, dederunt plausum, gave, and obviously plausum means applause, the word from which our English word directly derives. So after this, the slaves applauded, and they shouted, they called out, "Geo feliciter," a Latin idiom, which simply means good luck to Gaius, or nice job, Gaius, something along those lines. And we find out that the cocus honoratus est, the cook, was honored, potione, with the drink, so Trimalchio gave the cook, who had played his part very well, a drink, and more significantly, the cook accepit, he received a poculum, a cup, and it was he was honored with a silver cup, with a silver crown, excuse me, and he received a cup meaning on, a Corinthia lanque, a plate made of Corinthian bronze. Now, Corinthian bronze is something that is actually quite fancy. We don't have any extant examples of Corinthian bronze, but we do have literary descriptions of it. And it was a highly valuable metal, an alloy made of gold, silver, and bronze with a very distinctive patina, a very distinctive gleam. So this is something, this gift to the cook of a cup, a poculum made from on a plate of Corinthian bronze, is something really quite valuable. In the next sentence, we start, oddly enough, with what looks like, and in fact is, a relative pronoun. We expect to see relative pronouns somewhat deeper in a sentence, certainly following a noun or a pronoun, which serves as its antecedent. This quam is the first word in its clause. It's a very common use of the relative pronoun in Latin, called the connective relative. When we see this use of the relative, when we see relative standing as the first word in their clause or in a new sentence, the best thing we can do is translate it not as a relative, but as a demonstrative pronoun, something like this. So, when Agamemnon, or as Agamemnon, was looking more closely at, was considering quam, this, meaning the cup more closely, Trimalchio said, solus sum, I alone, I am the only man, qui, who has, I'm the only man who has vera Corinthia, real Corinthian bronze. And he continues, forsitan, perhaps, quirus, you ask. Here we have one of those words that introduces indirect questions. So we should be prepared for a question word to come next. And in fact, that's what we get. So, and perhaps you ask, quare, why? I alone, solus possedeam, I alone possess, Corinthia, Corinthian bronze. Then he gives the answer. Since indeed, quia scilicet, since indeed, the Ararius, the bronze maker, aquo emo, from whom I bought it, Corinthus vocator, is called Corinthus. This, of course, is a joke. Yeah, the bronze actually, you can tell from its name that it was developed in the ancient Greek city of Corinth. But Trimalchio immediately begins to explain that he's joking. And just so everybody knows he's not a complete idiot, he explains himself a little more deeply. And he says, and nay, and lest, excuse me, or if we wanted to capture this really specifically, this nay is introducing a negative purpose clause, in order that you not think me, and then an indirect statement, to be a nesapium, a complete idiot, a fool, while de beniscio, I know very well, and then another indirect question, unde Corinthia nata sint, where Corinthian bronze nata sint, literally is born or where it comes from. He goes on to give then an explanation that demonstrates that he is in fact a ne sapius, a complete fool. He says, when Ilium, and that's the ancient name for Troy, when Troy captum esset, was captured, after Troy had been captured, Hannibal, who had nothing to do with the Trojan War, in fact was the Carthaginian commander, one of the most brilliant generals who ever lived, the Carthaginian commander in the Punic Wars. But Trimalchio says, when Troy had been captured, Hannibal, a homo wafer, a slippery character, a wafer, essentially a sly or cunning man, a cunning man, and a magnus stelio. A stelio is literally a newt, kind of a baby frog, something very slippery. And I think that that's really what Trimalchio is getting at. So he is a sly guy, a sly character, and really slippery, magnus stelio, a great newt, meaning a very slippery character. What did Hannibal do? He congeroed, he gathered up all the bronze and gold and silver statues in one rogum, in one great pyre, a sort of like a funeral pyre, one great fire, and he burned them. And from this mass, obviously this mass of molten metal, ex hoc massa, from this mass, fabri makers, fabricators, artisans, sustulerunt. They took some of the metal out. They raised up the metal, and they facerunt. They made cups and statues. And he goes on to say, sic Corintha nata sint. Thus Corinthian bronze was born or arose. I hope this has been helpful. We'll discuss it more fully in class tomorrow. Have great days.